Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days, which will be taking us into the start of February, the first week of February in today's video. But Deluge is just going to go on. We're going to see more heavy bouts of rain sweeping in as we go into February. And I think we'll see the temperature starting to lift up a little bit as well, so probably turning a bit milder as we go into February. But the Deluge is just going to go on and on and on. There's no sign of an end. Really to the Atlantic, throwing these bouts of heavy rain up across the country. Before I go on back, I'm meant to be advertising best video ads on my pages at gazweathervids.com. If you press play on the video ad, you'll be supporting gazweathervids.com. Thanks very much for doing that. We're trying out some new ads as well, so you can click through those banner ads here on the home page and go through to the advertising website if you are interested in what they're showing. Thanks very much for doing all of that. Now, I've got one very cold day coming up on Thursday. Well, not very cold, but it is a proper cold day being forecast here, with temperatures really starting to get above freezing away from the coastal fringes, just 1, 2, 3 degrees really for much of central England, going up into northern England. It's probably staying below freezing all day, perhaps for parts of Scotland. That's the indication. Anyway, so that is a genuinely cold day. I haven't had many of those this winter, and I don't think we'll have many after that either, but that's certainly quite a cold day coming up just for Thursday. But it's a one day only sort of offer, because as we move through into Friday, we're going to find the next area of low pressure moving in off the Atlantic, very quickly pushing away that cold air, a Scandinavian high that's trying to deliver that easterly wind. Heavy rain will be coming in with that area of low pressure, and this is the horrendous looking chart we end up with by the end of Friday. Very hard to make out the central pressure on this area of low pressure, but I think it's down around 940 millibars again to the west of the country. Look how tight packed the ice bars are off the coast of Ireland. Really severe storm, severe gales out to sea, and certainly very windy conditions come across all parts of the country. There'll be heavy bouts of rain sweeping across that as well. Of course, Friday is the last day of January, so I suppose it's fitting that we end the month, this phenomenally wet January, on a very wet note. I mentioned in the video on Sunday the weather station at Coventry, the Bay Blake weather station. Bay up to Sunday had their second wettest January on record. Hadn't reached the all-time record that they recorded there in 1939. They have surpassed that now. They've got their wettest January on record, and their records go back to the 1870s. So a phenomenally wet January in Coventry anyway, and most places have had a really, really wet January, and it's fitting, I think, that the last day of the month will be ending on a very wet note once again. As we move through into February, there's no sign of a change really to this very unsettled wet pattern. The deluge will go on into February. These are the 500 millibar height anomalies, 8 to 10 day mean anomaly charts, which will be taking us towards the end of the first week of February. And look at this, the blue colours here indicating below average heights, low pressure, a huge area of blue sitting just to the west of the country. That is a very, very intense trough of low pressure sitting just to the west of the country. This is the ECM WF. The GFS is over there on the right. Have a look at that in a moment. But a really intense trough of low pressure, deep trough, which will be throwing up more bouts of heavy rain across the country moving through into February. The jet stream is quite interesting as well. I've got a very strong jet stream coming out of the Atlantic. Then it goes around that trough. Quite cold air really with that trough. But then with this ridge sitting to the east of the country, what happens is that the jet stream starts to rise northwards. And as the jet stream rises northwards, it's going to start to try and pull in some milder air from the south on the eastern side of this trough of low pressure. Although it's quite a cold trough of low pressure, there's a lot of cold air being fed into it out of Canada and Northern America, where of course we're having a very cold winter. The exact orientation of this means that we're going to start to try and draw up some milder air from the south, I think. The GFS is very similar. This is the GFS here over on the right again. The 500 millibar height normally shows a very deep trough of low pressure in the Atlantic and sitting just to the west of the country. Really, really deep trough. Jet stream, very strong jet stream coming across the Atlantic, and we are just about on the cold side of a jet. But as the jet moves northwards between the deep trough in the Atlantic and that ridge across eastern parts of Europe and western Russia. Again, we're going to try to pull up some slightly milder air from the south. But what you've got to really take from that is that with such a deep trough sitting just to the west of the country, it really is going to be very unsettled moving into the first week or so of February. No sign of an end for the new month to the deluge. So here's the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles. The red line here is where temperatures should be at this time of year. We're a little bit below it. I'm going to stay a little bit below it actually going into the first 2 or 3 days of February. But notice there is a general trend through the first week of February. This is February the 5th here, for instance. There is a trend that the temperatures do start to lift up through that first week of February and going on into the second week of February. It could turn really quite mild indeed. Many members of the ensemble will be going above that red line. So I think what we can basically say is that for the first week coming up, that's taking us from the end of January into the start of February, we're going to be quite chilly. Then through the second week, which takes us from around the middle of the first week of February on into the second week of the month, we're going to see those temperatures trying to lift up and become milder. Whether the temperatures stay on the chilly side or lift up, it's going to be very unsettled. Lots of precipitation spikes. Look at all these rainfall spikes here on the bottom of the chart. No end to it, is there? Very wet spell coming up over the next few days. Very wet again for the start of February, and it just goes on through the first half of February at least. So we are going to be in for more really wet conditions. Temperature anomalies for the next week, taking us from Tuesday 28th January to Tuesday 4th February, show that we're going to be a little bit below average, but the coldest anomalies are to the east, and they are actually starting to recede to the east, recede back in towards Russia. Temperature anomalies begin to pick up for Scandinavia, for instance, during the coming week. So, finally have a look at the generic charts. Here's the chart from the GFS model for the 4th of February, next Tuesday, and there's that deep trough of low pressure out to the west of the country that we saw on the height anomaly chart. Strong winds coming around that low pressure, and there'll be heavy bouts of rain as well. As we move through towards day 10, it's staying very unsettled. Another deep area of low pressure then comes in on Friday the 7th of February. That is day 10, spreading heavy rain across all parts of the country. It's wet, windy, not desperately cold. Winds are actually trying to come up a little bit more from the south or southwest with that, so temperature's probably lifting up a little bit, but it certainly is very, very unsettled. The ECMWF again has the low pressure out to west of the country on Tuesday the 4th of February. There's the winds trying to come in from the south, by the way, trying to lift some milder air up from the south. I think temperatures will pick up a little bit, maybe going up towards double figures towards the end of the first week of February. But the main thing is the rain. The low pressure will be driving more weather fronts in across the country, heavy bouts of rain. And there we go, day 10, Friday the 7th of February, shows that low pressure to the west. Lots of wet and windy weather sweeping across the country. Finally, having a look at the GEM, that's no different. The low pressure is there to the west of the country, very deep trough of low pressure. Winds are generally from a southerly to southwesterly direction, so it's not going to be cold towards the end of the first week of February, but it's very unsettled with low pressure out to the west, weather fronts sweeping across the country, and bouts of really heavy rain moving through. Between rain, there'll be heavy showers. So there's no end to the deluge, it just goes on and on and on. We're going to be changing the month, a new month going on into February, but no change in the weather. The only change that temperatures may start to try and lift up and turn a bit milder, but really the main story is the rain. There'll be more flooding concerns, obviously, as we move into February with this rain continuing. The deluge goes on. That's it for now. 5-day forecast tomorrow. Come back that. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.